Hi, I'm Professor Beck Strah.
And I'm Professor Eric Bronson, and you're listening to Prison Breakdown.
2, 3, break!
Hate to spoil his fun, but we're gonna bust out of here.
2, 3, break!
I'm locked in here with you. You're locked in here with me.
2, 3, break!
I can honestly say I'm a changed man. No danger to society here. God's honest truth.
2, 3, break!
I'm not leaving this cell. I'll get out my way. The right way.
2, 3, break!
Ahoy, dudes! Welcome back to another action-packed episode of Prison Breakdown.
Ahoy, dudes.
Hello.
How are you?
Ahoy.
I'm distracted by
I'm
the glorious weather that we have. You know I like to comment on the weather, and it is fantastic over here on the bay. My goodness, the water is just as blue as can be. It's sunny. At least that's the East Coast. I don't know how the West Coast is.
We're doing pretty well over here. We're in the 60s today. It's supposed to get up to the 80s later in the week, so I'm looking forward to that.
Nice.
Now, we're talking about this nice weather. I'd like to plug our sponsor real quick. Roger Williams University is kind of by your house, isn't it, Bronson?
It's right here. It's on the other side of the bay. It's just right there. It's a stone's throw. Our gorgeous campus.
Should we promote the theory that you live in your office at Roger Williams University?
I don't know that I'd go that far. I don't want to live in the office. That's when I was dean. I had to live in the office. Not anymore. Life as a professor.
At that point, it was fact.
Yeah. No more. Not anymore. I get to go home and enjoy this wonderful Rhode Island weather that we have, and it's fantastic.
Now, what can you tell us about the Roger Williams School of Justice Studies? I hear good things.
Well, the School of Justice Studies brings you all of the necessary majors you need to get into that criminal justice lifestyle that you want, including criminal justice.
Not behind the bars.
Yeah. Criminal justice, legal studies, which is essentially a pre-med, or excuse me, pre-law. Can we edit? Let's go back. Let's edit. Can't have that. Let's edit that and go back. So Roger Williams School of Justice Studies brings you criminal justice, legal studies, which is pretty much a pre-law program, forensic science, and cybersecurity. And the cybersecurity major has this new part that I'm really encouraging our criminal justice majors to get into, and that's that digital forensics, where they can combine their criminal justice skills that they're learning along with investigations into devices such as cell phones and iPads to really be to step out on the market and just have skills that other applicants just simply won't have. And it's a great combination. So great opportunities, School of Justice Studies, and we appreciate their support.
Thank you, School of Justice Studies. And honestly, that digital forensics sounds pretty exciting. I didn't even realize that was one of the initiatives that they were currently working out. So I'm glad to hear it. Glad to see that they're playing with innovative ideas.
Yeah, it's fantastic. You know, most of these students, they leave when they have that digital forensics, and they can end up going into the world of cybersecurity if they want to. But a lot of the CJ majors with that certificate in digital forensics can be a digital investigator, because most police officers don't have the background to be able to break into a digital world. They just don't know what they're looking for, and this gives them the skills to do it.
Most excellent. And let's check in with producer Brit. Producer Brit, how are we doing today?
Producer Brit's doing fantastic today. Thank you. Just over here on the West Coast.
And obviously you have to be excited about today's topic. Right up your alley again. More movie
May-nute.
May-nute.
Indeed.
Rather than the movie minute. Movie May-nute.
Always excited about movies, and we got two rip roaring prison bangers today.
This is fantastic.
Indeed.
Fantastic.
But before we get to those rip roaring prison bangers, I'd like to see what's in the news. Let me open the paper and run that song.
Fresh news, hot off the razor wire.
All right, the news fresh off that razor wire includes the feds closing a prison dubbed the Rape Club. And
Yuck.
Yeah, exactly. And the accountability that goes along that's needed, So according to a piece in The Hill, the Federal Bureau of Prisons announced they were closing FCI Dublin, dubbed the Rape Club, by inmates due to its sordid history of staff members raping female prisoners. The closure comes after years of BOP ignoring complaints and protecting officers from prosecution. This just sounds awful. This is horrible.
Yeah.
The Associated Press conducted a thorough investigation and found a permissive and toxic culture at the Bay Area lockup, enabling years of sexual misconduct by predatory employees and cover-ups that have largely kept the abuse out of the public eye. The AP reported that approximately a dozen Dublin employees were removed for sexually abusing inmates. One employee videotaped himself having sex with inmates and stored those tapes in a prison locker. None. Here's the awful part. None of the employees were arrested. Finally,
how?
Yeah,
the guy who he's on tape,
right? Right. How are you? Come on. Finally, the Justice Department's Inspector General and the FBI learned about the inmate suit against the Dublin staff who assaulted her. They undertook a criminal investigation and brought criminal charges against 8 prison staff, finally, including the warden and chaplain. 7 were convicted, and 1 case is still pending. Dublin is not alone in its climate of guard raping inmates. At FCC Coleman in Florida, 15 inmates filed complaints of sexual assaults against at least 6 correctional officers in 2019. The BOP interviewed the officers under oath, and all of them admitted to engaging in sexual misconduct with inmates. Sounds like
they kept their jobs.
Let's see. It doesn't go on to say whether or not they did. Several of them have retired with full pensions.
Oh, that must be nice. Wow.
Yeah.
I'm taken aback.
You mean them still having the pensions is nice, not what they're doing is nice.
Yes, obviously. What they're doing is very not nice. It's totally wild, totally unacceptable. Who turned this place the Rape Club? Like, were the officers calling it that, or is the news calling it that?
The inmates called it that because of what was going on there. Yeah, that they live at a rape club.
And you said
just awful.
Right.
You said the chaplain was implicated too.
Come on, are you surprised?
I mean,
why would
I don't know.
why would the prisons be any different than what's going on in the churches?
Yeah, that's. I mean, at least they're waiting for adulthood at the prisons, but yikes!
Yeah, no, horrible stuff.
Yikes!
Horrible stuff. So I'm sure there's going to be more of this to be brought out, in the future, but it's kind of, if we look at it to equivalent to what's going on with police, people who are in positions of power, if they get the opportunity to take advantage of that power, it's one of those things where we got to find somebody to keep these groups accountable for what they're doing. All these people keep them accountable. And again, as you said, there's no more accountability than somebody with tapes. So, he was keeping himself accountable,
Right.
and he just didn't have to turn it over.
And I want to touch on the almost the inverse of that, where the people without the power, like the inmates who are
Right.
calling this place the Rape Club.
Yeah.
Why is nobody listening to them? Why is there no accountability to? Hey, maybe we follow up on. Let's follow up on this investigation. Why are inmates calling this place the rape club? That is insane. That it would carry on for how long has this been carrying on? Like, this is not an overnight sensation.
No, this has been going on for years, and you figure that the Priya would have been one of those things to really help with this,
Yeah.
but clearly there's not enough being done, and Congress needs to act on this.
And for the listener, PREA stands for, it's PREA, the Prison Rape Elimination Act, went through in 2003, signed by George W. Bush. And it was a bill essentially put through in reaction to a young man getting raped and beaten repeatedly in a Texas prison. Guys reaching out to family saying, help do something about this. And nobody does anything about this. And the young man eventually killed himself. And am I getting the facts of that story right, Eric?
Yes, sir.
And so it was PREA laws were established with reporting requirements and making it very clear to staff and inmates alike that inmate on inmate and staff on inmate sexual contact is entirely unacceptable in workplaces. Like, you cannot have a consensual relationship between staff and inmates due to these significant power imbalances.
Right. Well, in fact, when we go on tours of prisons, we have to sign a sheet of paper based off of PREA. So
yes, it would be nice to know that the government was doing more than having us sign a perfunctory sheet of paper to go on a tour, though. Like, investigate this shit, do something.
Right. No, this is awful. But so that's the news, my friend.
Wow. Start on a downer, though. Like, it's all right. It's only going to get better from here, everyone.
For some reason, maybe I'll just for the next time we record, I'll come up with some happy prison news so we can set the mood.
Yes. Find some notorious inmate who's gotten released or something like that.
Exactly. Hey, this is exciting.
Yeah, that's true. Prison news is not known for its
it's hardly going to be it's hardly going to be uplifting. It's all the news to start your day.
Yeah. All right, shall we move on to the main attraction?
Let's do it. Let's run that theme.
Run it. Hey. May.
60 seconds with producer Brit to talk about movies.
The question mark at the end of your May was outstanding. All right, mateys. Today, mateys. I don't know. It feels like it's trying too hard with my ahoy. All right, crew. There we go. All right, crew. Today, our two films are Law Abiding Citizen and Bronson. We're going to start by talking about Law Abiding Citizen from the year
2009.
2009.
That's what I thought. 2009.
Mm-hmm.
So, producer Brit, would you like to break down the plot of Law Abiding Citizen for the listeners?
Certainly. So the movie starts with a horrific home invasion scene. We have Gerard Butler, who is playing a character named Clyde Shelton, has his home invaded by two guys who murder his wife and child. So he spends the next 10 years while one of them is on trial. And so one of the guys goes on trial and flips on the other guy. And so one of them gets the death penalty and the other gets a reduced sentence and he gets out in 3 years. So Gerard Butler's character, he arranges to have the lethal injection go wrong for the guy on death row, and then he goes and finds the other guy and tortures him to death. Then after this, the prosecutor, played by Jamie Foxx, puts him in jail, and it's kind of a back and forth thriller between Gerard Butler always being like one step ahead of Jamie Foxx and trying to take down the system from within inside of prison.
Yeah. Well articulated.
Very
Now-
succinct. Yeah. I like that.
A couple things. So we see Gerard Butler's family die within the first, 3 to 4 minutes of the film.
Yep.
And I felt like it would have had more impact if we had actually gotten to know his family. Like I get it. I get the pain here of losing your family, watching them murdered in front of you.
Oh, I thought you
But
meant that
it felt like-
that they deserved it, knowing that they deserved to die that way. I was like,
Yeah.
if you've given me 7 minutes with them, somebody get that kid to shut up.
He's like this sugary sweet dad, and she makes him a bracelet that says daddy, and it's of course this happens. One odd thing with the character development, at least for Jamie Foxx's character Nick, it establishes his character largely through platitudes and shorthand, and that's how he's established. Like, there's all these things saying where he'll say, "It's not what you know, Clive, it's what you can prove in court," or "This is how the justice system works," or he says, "Helen Keller could try this case," or "I won't take this case, I think it's a dog." He's got a 96% conviction rate. All I need is a jury to like me. So he's a slick talking, smooth lawyer. Some justice is better than no justice at all. And so we get to know him through that. But it shows the prosecutor's office does not always do the right thing. Sometimes they make deals for the sake of moving the system forward. And this is like a central issue that is explored in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think one of the big things that they could have done a better job of in the movie was letting us know, in a case like this where it's so obvious, where they have the two murderers, why do they need one to flip on the other? Why is that necessary? That part wasn't driven home to me. So I guess
Not at all.
I guess Jamie Foxx's character Nick, who is doing, who's taught, like you're saying, he's a slick talker and he uses all these little quips. I think it's setting him up really to be a lazy prosecutor because he needs the one to, I think if it was this obvious as the movie tries to make it out to be, you don't need either one of them to flip. I think I think the biggest thing would be whether or not they're both getting the death penalty, or one's getting life in prison and the other one's getting a death penalty, right? Then it's anyways.
So it did try to explain away why they needed one to flip on the other, and they said it's because the DNA evidence wasn't admissible, and it was like a bunch of blood on a T-shirt or something like that, which I don't think explains it very well at all.
No.
Oh, it did say the exclusionary rule,
Right.
and that did not explain it well either. It expects the audience to not know what they're talking about, I believe, and they'll just throw in a few legal terms, and the audience will go,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Right.
It's still a fun premise for what they do, but I don't think the dominoes were set up precisely as they thought they were.
Yeah.
Now, one of my favorite scenes in the movie, Clyde. His name's Clyde, I believe,
Clyde.
right? Clyde. He tricks Ames, one of the home invasion guys and murderers. He tricks him into trying to run from the cops, and then he takes a cop at gunpoint using the cop's own gun in a cop car, and it turns out Clyde was the cop who was supposedly passed out in this cop car because he was tasered all along. And the gun that was in the holster, it has spikes on it, and the spikes are laced with pufferfish venom that acts as a paralytic.
That's a what? I remember
Doesn't notice that there's spikes on the handle of the gun that he's gripping the entire time until it's revealed that there's pufferfish venom in there, and he's like, "Oh no!"
Well, what I love is that the pufferfish venom immediately causes paralysis, right?
Oh,
because
yeah,
he
yeah.
just stands there holding the gun. Like, I would think that if that would happen, wouldn't you kind of like fall over or drop the gun?
It's like a catatonic paralysis,
Okay,
where you get to keep standing. Apparently,
Yeah. Okay. All right.
But so then Clyde wants him to suffer like he felt he suffered. So he saws off all of his appendages and describes it later on. And
Don't forget, he cuts the eyelids, so he forces him to watch. Cuts his eyelids off. So he forces
cuts
him,
his eyelids off.
So he makes so the guy has to watch him cut off his appendages.
Has to watch him in a mirror that's positioned above him. Yeah, and he cuts his dick off with a box cutter. It's pretty gruesome. At this point in the movie, Brit succinctly summed up the movie in one sentence. Brit, do you want to take this one?
Gosh, I had a couple of them. What did I say? It was like it's like a revenge porn for people who have their wallets stolen.
You said it's like Saw for people who have their wallets stolen. Exactly.
That's great.
The politics of this movie, like while this is it's like a weird fantasy vigilante porn, but the politics of this movie are not great. They're very tough on crime. They're very reactionary.
Mm-hmm.
It's not entirely clear through a lot of the movie who we're supposed to be siding with. If we're supposed to be siding with Nick, the attorney, or if we're siding with Clyde. How did you two feel about this?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously it's a whole movie about vigilante crimes, right? I mean, that's essentially what it is. And are we supporting the vigilante criminal? Or are we sticking with the criminal justice system, or are we saying, yes, the criminal justice system needs to come down because it's crooked and it takes the easy way out? Or, I don't know. That's a tough one.
I think it's kind of the third option. Like the real antagonist and villain in this film, I feel, is the criminal justice system. Like it's the thing.
Oh, that's an interesting take.
Clyde is fighting back against. I mean, there's specific criminals and stuff, but more than anything, he's fighting back against this entire system that he thinks didn't dole out enough justice for the people who wronged him in the beginning.
Okay, I like that.
I can agree with that.
Yeah.
So, through a series of machinations in the film, Clyde keeps trying to make different deals with the prosecutors, saying, well, you have to make a deal with me. I have this kind of information. And if they don't meet his demands exactly, like he demands a certain time, it's got to be at 6 o'clock. It's got to be at 1 o'clock.
Yeah.
If they don't meet his demands on the minute, somebody's going to die.
Yeah. Right. And not just are they going to die, they're going to die in glorious ways, right? It's spectacular.
Yeah.
It's just a true spectacle.
Yeah. So the defense attorney for the home invaders from the beginning, he gets buried alive. A bunch of attorneys from the Philadelphia district attorney's office get blown up in their cars, including Nick's protege.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
One thing I do want to bring up, Eric, what do you know about the prison where it was filmed? It never makes clear because he should be pretrial,
right?
But it's also like a prison that's shown earlier in the movie that would assume it's a prison based on the context. What do you know about it?
That's what that was.
Weird.
So when we're looking, obviously, I focus on that kind of information. Is that I think that's a clear combination of taking advantage of society's bastardization of jails and prisons, because everybody in society uses those two interchangeably, and they're very different. So I think that they're trying to make it out to be a prison when it is a jail. And all of all of these bad acts are being committed, from this. But the actual place that it was filmed at is Holmesburg Prison. And it was nicknamed the Terror Dome.
That's better than the Rape Club.
Yeah. So, but yeah, that's where. And if you look at it, it's an it's an old Pennsylvania style prison. It's the old spoke and wheel system. So it's but it's shut down now. But it's still there, and it's used for. They said the Pennsylvania Department of Corrections said they can, or Department of Prisons. Sorry, that's what they call it in Pennsylvania. They still use it for overflow if necessary, but pretty much it's just used now for, just for films and as needed.
Interesting.
Yeah.
They also had, I don't know if you noticed this, there was an interview room that they keep cutting to in there, and it's like a reverse panopticon. So the idea of the panopticon being the prison unit is shaped like a wheel with corrections officers in a tower in the middle with bright lights facing outward to where all the inmates are on the outer edges on the perimeter of this wheel shape. And so the inmates in the circumstance are unable to tell if they're being watched or not. Now, the interview room was like a weird opposite almost, where there's a gallery with a catwalk where there's armed officers standing there with guns, I believe is what I saw.
Yeah.
And in the center is this caged in interview room. Have you ever seen anything like that?
No. No, I think they just use part. Yeah. I think that's not. They just use what was available to them as convenience to make the film. But have I ever told you about what my friends and I discussed about the Panopticon and what we think would be a fantastic idea?
No, hit me.
I think that this, we would do this in any large city, and I think it would really take off. It would be the Pub Opticon. Where the bar is in the center, and all the people are sent off in the spokes around, and you would be in a dance floor in between the tables. But yeah, it's a Pub Opticon.
This could be something.
Yeah.
Now, and maybe we put like, I like this idea. This is something else.
Yeah, I think we need to. We go up to Providence here, we buy a little space and turn it into the Pub Opticon. Just the name's going to bring the kids to the party, right? They're going to be ready to have fun. All the college kids would be coming to the Pub Opticon, right? And that'd be a good time. And just think about it. If we get several floors, we can have different tiers of punishment.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. I love this idea. I think it's got legs.
Yeah. Although the different levels of punishment is kind of plagiarizing my idea for a Dante's Inferno bar. So
that's great.
Different levels of punishment. Would one level be like shots, and the next level is like mixed drinks, and the third level is beer? What's
I feel like the beer just gets worse as you go down until like the seventh rung is like Miller Lite or something like that.
Yes, I'm on board.
Well, and just think, if we wanted to, we could do this like on an. If we really want, get fun with it, we could have this on a Caribbean island somewhere, right? And we have the rec yard out into the pool.
Ooh, I like
Have
that.
rec time on the floor.
Yeah, this is the opposite of punishment at a certain point. Yeah, I like this. Now back to the film. I didn't see much realism in terms of the prison here, but there was a scene where Clyde demands a new mattress for his stay in the prison if he is going to talk, if he's going to give a confession. And Clyde talks to the warden after he gets his new mattress, and the warden says, "You got bigger problems in here, son. You've got have-nots in here. You don't want to be the one have." Now, reflecting on that, I like where he's coming from, because that is like the one sense of realism where people have so little in prison that if you are the one who actually has something, it puts a target on your back.
Right. And I think they could have built on that and, had a little, a little bit in the prison where he does struggle a little bit, but I think he immediately kills his cellmate, doesn't he? Right?
Oh yeah. So at that in the next scene, he gets a steak. He demands a steak if he's going to tell them where this defense attorney is buried alive, and so he gets the steak and all the trimmings, and demands a 30% tip for the waiter. One thing I liked about it, they're wheeling in the steak and all the trimmings on a cart, and the cart had like a squeaky wheel going side to side.
Right.
That felt like a piece of realism too, of like nothing in the jail is going to be perfect, and there's always going to be that one cart with the squeaky wheel. And Clyde also got a spork for eating his steak. That's also super realistic.
Yeah.
Because inmates don't get real cutlery. They get sporks.
Right.
And this is because other stuff they can use as solid weapons. Yeah. Now, Clyde somehow, while he's eating, I wasn't exactly clear on what it was that he pockets, but he pockets something sharp and stabs his cellmate to death with it. Did either of you see what it was that he pocketed?
No,
I don't really.
I just know it was almost immediately after that discussion with the warden.
Interesting. So originally, when the scene was filmed, he had stabbed his cellmate to death with a steak bone, and it was so bloody that the ratings board gave it an NC-17 rating, and so they had to refilm it with less blood and with I don't know why they took out the steak bone and made him pocket some kind of sharp object, but they did. So somewhere along the way, we find out Clyde was a spy, but he's more than a spy. His coworker said, "No, he's more than a spy. He's a brain. Just assume this guy can see and hear everything you're doing. Every move he makes, it means something. He's this tactician, and you're just pawns on his board." And this whole thing is wild. So if we were to examine the hypermasculinity in the film, I do see it with how Clyde acts around his cellmate. Clyde says, "I did what I had to do." It's a long story when he asked what he did to go in there. He's showing off in front of the other inmates. He's got his iPod playing with a big speaker to the whole unit, and he gets taken to solitary after he stabs the guy to death. This movie exists in its own weird reality.
Yeah.
I don't know that any of this stuff would actually be done ever in a prison.
Well, no, it's such a stretch. I don't know. It's as the movie goes on and on, it becomes, it's one of those where it just bothers you with how, as a prison person, it just bothers you about all the crap that goes on in it until you see what happens at the end, and this is nonsense. I just get frustrated.
Yeah, and there are so many things that just don't make a lot of sense. They're also like the mayor at one point locks down the city and puts cops on blast and trying to create a police state where her idea is if the justice system is broken, add more justice system.
Right.
And I don't think that necessarily works. And maybe that's part of Clyde's point. It's not really that clear. But the movie just descends into like this weird silliness at a certain point. I mean, one of my favorite scenes in the movie, they're mourning their lost colleagues at a funeral, and then a gun robot comes out and blows up a car.
Come on, not just a gun robot. It also launches a missile, doesn't it? I mean,
it's incredible. I can't help but love something like that. It is so silly. They also the Nick, as the DA, is working with one of the detectives. They find this passage underneath a car in one of Clyde's properties, and they find that he's been sneaking in and out of the prison. He wanted to go to solitary confinement, and that's why he stabbed his cellmate to death. And he's been disguising himself as a cop and as a janitor. I love a disguise scene. He plays a real working class janitor with a beard. It's so silly. So towards the end, we see that Nick confronts Clyde in his cell with a gun. You can't bring a gun into prison.
Right, exactly.
You can't bring a gun into prison under any circumstances. It doesn't matter if you're the DA or not. You're not bringing a gun in.
Why would the DA have a gun?
That's a good question. He has never been established before this as someone having a gun. I wish he would have had the gun with the puffer fish spikes too. That would have been like, more poetic. And so he finds out that Nick confronts Clyde, and Nick says, by murdering people, you're disgracing the name of your daughter and hurting all these people who end up suffering, just like you suffered. And Clyde offers to make a deal with him, and Nick says, I don't make deals with murderers anymore, Clyde. You taught me that. And he's finally learned the lesson that the movie wants you to learn, is that maybe we shouldn't use plea deals. I think that's the lesson.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. I think that's the overarching theme of the film is the justice system is broken because we make deals.
Yes. And I won't say that they're entirely wrong with that. I just don't think it is handled gracefully or in a way that is intelligible.
No,
exactly. No, it's the whole thing just is becomes pure nonsense. I mean,
it's incredible.
I mean, he's tunneling all throughout. I mean, because it was on one of his properties, right? That just happened to be closer to the prison. But he's not just tunneling under a prison to one cell. He had the whole prison map structure, pretty much a tunnel built to almost every cell, right? Isn't that what it essentially was?
Just in case he got locked up in that specific solitary confinement cell, he had a tunnel leading to every cell.
How did they not hear him do this? Like, solitary confinement is not the loudest place in a jail. Like,
well, the other thing, let's take a look at this in a look. I mean, the Big Dig in Boston took 21 years, right? And he's doing this in 10 years all by himself and with his hands. Come on. Oh, it's just so frustrating.
Well, there was that news story last year where there was a group of guys like tunneling in New York from like a synagogue across town. Do you remember this?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
So I believe if they can do it, he can do it as well. It's not unheard of.
That's a whole team of people.
Right.
That's true.
Right.
Now, the movie ends with there's a suitcase under a delegation of people who are meeting at City Hall, and the suitcase is full of explosives. There's a cell phone that Clyde has to call to set it off. And Clyde ends up making the call thinking it's going to blow up this delegation. And oh, guess what? Nick has tricked him, and Clyde ends up nuking himself in his cell. It was awesome.
Yep.
Allegedly.
Yeah.
Sorry, go for
Fun
it.
twist. Like I thought it was a pretty fun twist. It was something I didn't see coming, even though I saw this film like 15 years ago.
I didn't see it coming at all, but allegedly, the original ending had Clyde definitively winning this war of wits between him and Nick, but Jamie Foxx hated the ending so much that he refused to keep filming until they changed the ending to one where Nick beats Clyde in the war of wits.
Wow.
Well,
There
then
are also differing accounts of this.
did the crooked criminal justice system win in the end then? The one that we were supposed to be cheering against the whole time?
It's unclear. The movie's message is just it's such muddled dog shit that like I can't make heads or tails of it. It's fun and I enjoyed watching the movie. Interestingly, also, Jamie Foxx was originally cast as Clyde and Gerard Butler was originally cast as Nick. And one account says Butler suggested that they switch roles. Another account has the producer suggesting they switch roles. But either way, the outcome was the same. And the stars of the movie were into this idea. And they flipped roles from what they were originally cast. Now, to wrap this up, Roger Ebert gave this film 3 out of 4 stars. He said Law Abiding Citizen is one of those movies you like more at the time than in retrospect. I mean, come on, you're thinking. Still, there's something to be said for a movie you like well enough at the time.
Right. Okay. I get that because, at the time you're just like, oh, this is entertaining, but it also is, you just get frustrated throughout the whole thing. This is such bullshit.
Indeed. I think it's fun to watch. I'm in agreement with him on that, though.
Yeah, it's a popcorn thriller.
There you go.
Yeah. Indeed. Any final thoughts on the film?
Well, how many soups you give it there, Professor?
I give it a 2.75 out of 5 soups. I enjoyed it. You know, I'm going to round it up to 3. I enjoyed it. It's silly popcorn fun.
Yeah.
That's garbage. Your rating's garbage.
Would you
It's as bad as this. It's as bad as this horrible movie.
would you
I can't go above a 2. I was literally thinking a 1.75. While it is entertaining, it is such utter bullshit. I mean, just the scene where he confronts the judge and starts calling the judge out on what she was going to do.
It was so sanctimonious. It was so funny.
Oh, it's so horrible. So 1.75 soups.
Yeah, during that scene, brother, you were like, this is like the weird conservative dad who shows up to PTA meetings. And I'm like,
yeah, exactly.
the guy who knows like 3 rules and like their codes and just like calls them out.
Yeah, so unpleasant to deal with. Yeah. I stand behind that. It's goofy, but I couldn't help but enjoy watching it. Producer Brit, hit us. Wait, what did you think of the film?
I thought it was a pretty fun popcorn action flick, completely devoid of like any sort of common sense or like any discernible message or like theme other than justice bad. Ultimately though, I had fun watching it. It's fun to watch with someone else and like point out all the flaws. I'd give it a right in between you two, 2.5 soups.
A fair judgment. There you have it. Law Abiding Citizen. All right, so our second film of the day is the film Bronson from 2008. And for this one, I'm going to let my main man, the real Bronson.
The real Bronson. That's right.
Take this away. Tell us about the film, Bronson.
Well, first of all, I think we have to start off with, this film receiving an award for the greatest name ever for a movie.
Yeah, who gives that award? Is it a yearly award?
No, I mean the Oscars should come out with something. I mean, just the greatest name of all time. But Yeah. So the movie is I remember when I first watched it years ago. I didn't know there was going to be so much humor to it. There's a lot of dark humor in it, but it follows the life of England's most notorious prisoner and the individual who's done more damage in English prisons than anyone else in history. But born Michael Peterson,
Mhm.
and changes his name a few times, depending on what he was doing and what he was obsessed with at the time. But eventually he settled on the name Charles Bronson or Charlie Bronson, depending on which his situation was. But the movie follows his life, um, and with a little bit of lead up to his criminal lifestyle and him entering prison, and then his exploits while in prison, which is what he's really known for. It's not like he is the UK's worst prisoner or worst criminal ever. He's definitely the worst inmate ever, and it's has a lot to do with him taking hostages and doing things while he was incarcerated at different places, but mainly has to do with the amount of damage that he did while incarcerated, um, and and uh, and the actual dollar amount that's tied to it. So, but yeah, it's a fun one to start off with in terms of understanding a little bit of mental health and the lack of mental health lack of mental health available to inmates while they're in these facilities, even in places that we think of that tend to have more rehab and health needs or health available to these to inmates like we tend to think of. But Tom Hardy, I think, does a really good job of playing Bronson, and he, from what I understand, he actually spoke with Michael Peterson on the phone and actually met with him in preparation for his role, and I think he did a pretty damn good job of entering the weirdness that is, Charles Bronson inside the English prison system there.
Yeah, well put. I loved watching him in this film. The film is it feels like much more of an acting piece than it does like a cohesive story.
Mm-hmm.
Where we see him throughout these different phases of his life, and he's constantly kicking ass, constantly getting in trouble. He's a very physical guy, and he starts out, he says, there's nothing wonky about my upbringing. My parents were decent. They're respectable members of society. But he started to get in trouble in school, and he liked it. He noticed he was getting attention for it. He always wanted to be famous, and this is his way of obtaining fame. And my main takeaway from the film was this is a guy who, there are some mental health issues with him. At some point in his later evaluations, it's noted that he has antisocial personality disorder and also PTSD from some of the brutality that he's experienced during his time in prison. And that part was not mentioned in the film, but it was I found it online in some discussions of his recent attempts at parole, where he's still incarcerated after all this time. He's been incarcerated for almost 50 years. And he's never committed murder. He's just a very violent inmate and constantly staying incarcerated because he's such a violent inmate. But my takeaway from this was he uses violence almost like a performance art, and he wants to be recognized for it. But he also, it feels like at a certain point in the film, he realizes that his notoriety it doesn't mean as much outside of prison. And in prison he has this reputation to enjoy, which it's weird because we almost never see him interact with other inmates. When we do, he's treated like a celebrity.
Mm-hmm.
But then on the outside, people don't really know, like they just don't care as much.
Right.
And he just doesn't have the same status. He doesn't have the same respect. Like he at one point has a girlfriend. She tells him that, oh no, I have another boyfriend. It's not about you. And he goes and robs a jewelry store to get a ring and propose to her. And she says, oh, sorry, I'm already engaged to this guy, Brian. And it felt like this like crushing moment for him of, well, oh, okay. He doesn't appear crushed, but it's like something is breaking inside of him. And well, I guess I'm just going to go back to what I'm doing then.
Mm-hmm.
What did you two get out of that?
Yeah, like I mean, the whole thing was like super interesting. How he was like a prison celebrity, basically, and it has times where he's released and he goes and he tries to be like a bare knuckle boxer, and he thinks he's going to be like immediately like notable and recognizable because he's so big in prison, but like he does his first fight and the guy gives him just 20 quid and he's like, 20 quid, like I deserve more for that fight. And the guy's like, yeah, you just pissed on a gypsy in the middle of nowhere, like no one knows who you are. And
I think one of during that, where you get to see the really dark side, is when he fights the dog, thinking that's really gonna, people are going to really just be in awe of him. Instead, you could tell they're rather turned off by the whole idea of fighting a Rottweiler. Excuse me. But yeah, and I think once he is sent back to prison and quickly takes the librarian hostage, I think that reaffirms that, hey, this is where I can draw that crowd. And I do really think there are plenty of people that are inside institutions that are famous within that prison or within that prison system, that are famous or infamous, I guess you could say, or famous, however you want to look at it, that people on the streets just have no clue who the hell they are. I mean, it's weird that you hear about, the Birdman or somebody like that. We generally, that doesn't spill up back out into society. And I think society likes it that way, right? We don't want to know what goes on behind that fence.
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it. It's prison is an insular society. It's an insular culture, and they have their own norms. And this is one of those weird instances where they have their own celebrity culture of a sort, and it just doesn't necessarily translate to other cultures. It's like how Robbie Williams was big in the UK and never really hit in America.
Yeah, definitely.
Other thoughts on the film?
I think that one of the other really strong points of this is that the movie does a good job of showing is how with certain inmates you don't know what's going to set them off. You don't know what's going to make them. It's not tick. You're like, oh, what makes them tick? What really flips that switch and makes them go into a rage and act upon that rage. When that whole scene with the when they're shutting down the art studio and he attacks the teacher. I think, obviously that art studio was something that was really important to him, even though they, might be something that they might not express, but there are certain things that the inmates do that ends up being really, really important to them. And I think it's a really good scene. And, I think it's pretty well characterized as what goes on with a lot of people that are locked up either as adults or juveniles, that we just don't know what's going to flip that switch.
Yeah, I guess I hadn't thought of it that way. I also, it makes me consider, it's not that he's mad at any one person. Like he never really shows that much malintent toward a single individual. maybe at a couple times through the movie, but it's more just this like blind rage that has consumed this guy, and he just wants to fight. He's just looking for a fight. Bring it, whoever it is, and he's not out to kill anybody. He's not out to maim anybody. He's just there to fight, and so is making his reputation and the legend of Bronson that much bigger.
Yeah, now that I think about it, does he ever fight any other prisoners in the film, or is it just guards mostly and policemen?
I think
it's just the staff.
Yeah, I think it's mainly the staff.
Yeah. Huh.
And if you think about that,
another thing I really wanted to call out in this movie was the narrative structure that it uses. The entire thing, it keeps on cutting back to scenes of Tom Hardy as Bronson in like a playhouse in which he's like in front of a large crowd, a large audience who's like captivated by him. And he's like, he tries a lot of different things. He wears a lot of different outfits and like paints his face and stuff like that. And it's like incredibly theatrical. And it really shows like how Bronson really wants to be like a star and like be theatrical about everything. And it's a cool through line that really ties the movie together really well, I think.
I love that part.
Yeah.
It gives the movie a spine, and everything kind of digresses from this overarching narrative. There's a lot of scenes where he will turn away from the audience and turn back, and he'll suddenly have new makeup on.
Mm-hmm.
And he's so theatrical. He's so charismatic in his flourishes. Tom Hardy is phenomenal in this film.
Yeah.
I loved watching him.
Yeah, powerhouse.
Yeah, he was really good. Well, one of the things I did recall that there was a scene where he went after somebody who was being held. That was a child molester.
Yes,
but it's interesting. But I see that as it's along the same lines of him trying to up his standing with the inmates and in the inmate subculture, because he is constantly, building up that where he'll go after the staff anytime, and that's going to make you jump up in the prison system. And then if you go after a child molester, that's also going to move you up, because that's seen as being something honorable that inmates can do.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Indeed. As some trivia for the film, the real Michael Peterson shaved off his mustache and sent it to Tom Hardy to wear for the film.
Amazing.
Really?
Amazing.
Yes.
I wonder,
the director,
did he actually use it though?
My understanding is that he did. I may be incorrect in citing that, but still interesting.
Oh.
The director, Nicholas Winding Refn, who directed one of my favorite movies, Drive, which is very different from this film substantively, he was not allowed to meet Michael Peterson in custody since he is not from Britain, but Tom Hardy was. And as you said, he was able to meet him on a few occasions, and they hit it off. There's also some scenes in the film where you will see him wearing darkened shades. And apparently that was in reflection of real life, because living in poorly lit solitary confinement units damaged his eyesight. And so in more brightly lit spaces, he does have to wear shades. The movie is also inaccurate in that it paints Michael Peterson as this enthusiast of prison life. He's refuted this. He said, no, not really. Like, I've suffered this physical and mental trauma from my time incarcerated. And in more recent years, he's actually started, he's taken back the great name, and he's started going by Charles Salvador after the artist Salvador Dali. And he does this to signal his move towards artistry, where he's created a number of drawings and paintings, as we saw in the film, where he was on this art unit, that he's an artist and he was interested in art.
Mm-hmm.
Most recently, he did go up for parole in 2020 and was found not suitable for release. He's been locked up for 49 years with 2 short-lived stints of freedom. He's had 11 hostage-taking incidents over time.
Yeah. And it should be mentioned too that he has done several gallery showings of his work in order to try to show the parole boards that he is able to maintain some sort of job on his way out. But they still have denied him.
Interesting. Do we know if that was any of his real artwork that was used in the film?
I don't know for
don't know
sure.
that.
I imagine some of it was. I imagine like when they went like into his mind and whatever and did that kind of big collage and whatever. I assume it's
Yeah.
probably his work.
Well,
Yeah, I was assuming as well, but not sure.
I wonder how hard it would be to get our hands on a piece of that artwork.
That's a great question.
Oh, I can do some searches. I think that'd be a fun
Yeah.
piece to have. And he's published a few books full of this artwork. He's a 70-something-year-old man now. It'd be interesting to see what happens if he does go up for parole again, because I would hope at this point he's not considered a public danger.
Wasn't I think he had just gone up last year, if I remember, in 2023. Because when I was there in May, when I was over in England in May, they had talked about the guy who was the guide of our trip. I brought him up to him just because of my last name. Obviously, anybody who's from the UK who hears my last name either brings up, this guy, or they bring up the two Bronson that were captains in the army that invaded Ireland, and so that's why. And when I'm in Ireland and people hear my last name, they're not real. You're like, hey, welcome. Oh, great. Another English bastard. But yeah, so but they brought him up and they said, oh, he had just been paroled. I said, what? And they said, I didn't even know he was still alive. And they said, yeah, he's still alive. And he was just paroled, and they had gone up for parole, and they found him not suitable. So, but yeah, they of course said, he's no longer Bronson, he's Salvador.
No. So I did a little research, and it's actually pretty easy to find and get his artwork. You can get an original from him for as little as £500 and up to about £1,000, and then prints cost only about £25 a piece.
That sounds like some Professor Strah type money there. Yeah, I'm not there, but Professor Strah can definitely, even though he did miss my birthday recently, but he could, definitely buy me one of those.
Oh no!
Yeah.
Can I?
Happy birthday!
I did wish you a happy birthday. I wanted to be the last person of the day to wish you a happy birthday, and I hope I achieved it.
And it was a big one.
Oh yeah,
yeah, 50, old.
Oh.
Yeah. So
I didn't know this was 50 for you. Wait, what did you do for it?
Nothing. Nothing. I went to Italy a week later. Or 2 weeks later. Yeah. So nothing. So yeah.
You at least get a nice romantic dinner out of this?
No.
No, I'll take you out for one sometime. Don't you worry.
Oh.
As long as there's a painting at the end of it, I will definitely go to a romantic dinner with you, Professor.
So how many soups y'all give this one?
I give this one 3.5 soups. It's an interesting portrait of a guy that shows his motivations. I keep having the same problem with many of the prison movies that we have here, except for Law Abiding Citizen, is in that I wish they were more plot driven. Now, Law Abiding Citizen arguably had too much plot, but I would like something that is a nice medium between the two. And this one, it lost my interest at times because it was a little too meandering. So I'll go 3.5 because it did capture something very different from what I've usually seen in prison film. How about yourselves?
Yeah, I'm going to go a little bit higher on this one, and maybe he gets a bonus quarter of a soup just because of the greatest film name ever. So I'm going to go 4 soups on this one. I think the really strong performance by Hardy in this one, and I think there's one of the things that society doesn't know enough about is how inmates will just do anything to break up the monotony of the day. And I think this, granted, what he's doing to break up the day is, taking people hostage. But when we have inmates flooding cells or setting their mattress on fire, or who knows what, it's just, and well, why would they do that? Well, they're sick and tired of doing the same exact thing for 13 years. And I think that this movie helps draw attention to that. So yeah, 4 soups.
Nice. I'm going to agree with 4 soups. I was originally going to give it 3.5. But we get to see at least a full 30 seconds of Tom Hardy's dong in this film. So that knocks it up a half a soup.
All right, well deserved. All right, I think that's going to put a wrap on movie May-nute for this year. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the podcast, please like, rate, and subscribe. I hope you can go out and enjoy some of these prison films like we have. And for now, that's lights out. Lights out. Lights out. Lights out. Lights out.
like I knew you in a past life. I've seen your face before, or saw you in a dream light. Maybe I'm not sure. Tell me something I don't know, I just wanna hear it. Tell me something I don't know, I just wanna feel it. Tell me something I don't know, I just wanna hear it. Tell me something I don't know.